How's it going, guys? I'm here with my KTM 950 Super Enduro R, and I'm pretty much so excited to actually be able to do this video now, because it's taken a few months for me to get all the parts and to build it up to a point where I'm actually pretty happy with it. Now, two things before I get into this video. One, even though it's a KTM, this is actually a bit of a budget build. There's some parts that through the other bike builds I've done, I've kind of realized I don't need to go top dollar on. So when I'm walking around the bike talking about it, I'll kind of try and point out to you where I think you can save money and you don't have to actually spend that top dollar. And number two, this being an adventure build, I've built this bike up to be able to do 3-day trips comfortably. If I wanted to do 2-month-long trips, I would have bought a KTM 950 Adventure or the 990 Adventure. But this really is so I can just thrash it around, camp for very short periods of time, and just have fun with it and try and keep to that sort of ethos of this KTM being an enduro, being a heavy, big, powerful dirt bike. So I've tried to keep it as much as I can, the weight down, the power up, and the fun factor hopefully up as well. Okay guys, let's start up front. Now, first and foremost, getting straight into it, I've skimped out on the mirrors. Now, my other WR250R, that has a double take mirror system. So that's the ram ball mount, and to be honest, what I've found is that it's a real bitch to put back into the correct position. I have to get back on it, try and adjust both and have a look. Whereas these cheap eBay ones, they literally just fold back down out of the way when you're riding, and then when you want to get back on the main road, they just flip up. And they're cheap as well. If I smash this, I'll just order another pair for 10 bucks, whatever they cost. Really nothing in it there. Now, my hand guards, usually on all my bikes, I run jet bark busters. And I just wanted to do something different. There's nothing wrong with jet bark busters. I'd buy them again in a heartbeat. But I just went with these blue Cycra hand guards, which I actually got from Alibaba, I think, for $60. So again, another nice way of saving a few bucks. But these are sturdy. They're not plastic. They are pretty damn sturdy. Next, I've got my ram mount. Now, I bought the ram mount before the quad lock came out. I'm not such a fan of the quad lock with how many people's phones have been destroyed, even though they have the vibration dampener now. I'm just burnt with that. So I just run a ram mount on all my bikes. It's the same one I've used for years and it still works. And my phone has never come out of the ram mount. Some people complain about that. Next, I've got a Scott's steering dampener on this bike. Now, that's actually quite an expensive mod, but luckily for me, I already bought this for my 300 EXC Enduro bike. So all I do is switch it between the bikes. All I've had to do is invest in the mount, which I think costs about $200. And it's literally 2 bolts to take this Scott's dampener off and on between the bikes. And this being a bigger bike, the 21-inch, the front is pretty unstable at slow speeds, I find. So running the Scott's really just gives me that little bit more confidence on this big bike. Being so new to big bikes as well, I think it's really helping me build up my confidence on this bike. Lastly, I've got just a 12-volt little cigarette socket, and this was actually put in by the previous owner, but fits really well and actually looks almost factory. I was questioning whether it was factory, but looked into it and no, it's not. But yeah, just a little thing there to just charge my phone, nothing more than that. And that's pretty much it for the front. Really just trying to keep it simple. One other thing I've just missed is that I did put a Pro Taper bar on. Now this bike, when I bought it, came with a high-rise Pro Taper, and then that added with the steering dampener mount, the cables were stretching. There was just not enough play. So I've actually gone for the lowest Pro Taper bar I could find in terms of height to try and match the original geometry that this bike would have. So the steering dampener adds roughly about 1 inch in height, and I've tried to compensate with getting the lowest bars. I really think the factory positions on KTMs are perfect, at least for me. Anyway guys, that's it. Keeping it simple up front. Let's go to the middle of the bike. Okay guys, here in the middle of my KTM 950 Super Enduro, and I've kept the seats stock. Now the cover isn't stock. That was about $120 shipped from America. Really nice, good quality. It's Moto K. I'll put a link up for that. But anyway, the foam is stock. This is a really wide seat. Because this bike's based off the Adventure, the SM, or the road versions, it's a really wide seat for what you'd think an Enduro would have. So, didn't really need to change the foam. My ass is loving this seat. The only other thing I want to bring as well is the rectifier here, the voltage rectifier. Now, it's a common failure on these 950 Super Enduros. Stock, they run very close to the mid-pipe of the exhaust, and they seem to cook and they just shit themselves, and then you're out in the middle of nowhere with no power. So this is a normal modification to be doing. The wiring loom, the actual stock wiring loom, has enough length in it for you to relocate it down here. And this is just an aluminium plate I made up with a few clamps, copied the design from some US manufacturer. Really simple and easy to do. Now I've got peace of mind, don't have to worry about that. Not really all that much else going on in the middle of this bike, but I just want to draw attention to one thing, which is the fuel tank. Now this is a stock Super Enduro fuel tank, and it's roughly 14 litres. Now I have not put on the Safari 30 litre tank for a reason. One, I'm adding size to the bike, I'm adding more weight with that, 16 litres extra of fuel. So when we get into the back of the bike, I will talk to you about the rotor pack and a bit more why I've decided to go this route rather than a 30 litre Safari tank on front. On the back of this bike, I've got beautiful twin titanium Akrapovic exhausts, which save me 6 kilograms from the stock exhausts. Now that offsets my fake eBay rotor pack 5 litre. When this is filled with fuel, it evens itself out, which is amazing. The reason why I went with the cheap eBay version of the rotor pack is that I'm not going to be running this every day. This is just in case I need that little bit extra range on a day trip ride or on a 3-day overnighter sort of a ride. So this is only going to be put on this bike every now and then. And for that reason, I don't need that quality. I don't need to rely on it. I'm not crossing the Simpson Desert. This is just okay as a cheap option. So it's mounted to a B&B rear rack. This is aluminium. B&B still make this. They make 2 versions, actually, a smaller version. And as far as I can tell, it's great. And I got it for free as it came with the bike, so perfect. Now, I've also done a rear tail tidy, because obviously all stock bikes have a massive amount of plastic at the back of the bike. I've tied it up myself. I've cut down the stock rear fender and mounted the number plate higher and repositioned the indicators. And I think it looks great for a free option, because I could only find I think a $200 option in Europe shipped. And look, this took me maybe 2 hours to do, so I was happy to do that. Now, one thing you can't see is the rear subframe reinforcement down here. Now that's a triple clamp product. The Super Enduro and Super Motard version, KTM says you should only be putting 5 kilograms on the back, and there have been cases where the subframe has cracked a little. So this was, I think, maybe $100, $150, but for me it's that peace of mind that running 5 kilograms of fuel on the back, then with my Krieger bags, with all my luggage and possibly even a tent on top, my subframe is not going to be breaking when I'm launching it over mounds and things like that. That is just a little bit of peace of mind, and weighs absolutely nothing. And there is a option that you can actually drill further holes and drill it into the subframe, but I've just gone with the standard mounting points. But a great product from Triple Clamp. And really that's it for the back. Down under here, I've got, again, some eBay copies, I think, of a Cherbis exhaust protectors. Now, I have them on either side of the exhaust. So when I run my Krieger bags, it's not just the heat shield pushing straight onto the exhaust. I have that other little bit of a layer of protection here with my Krieger bags. I've also got the Motors Tractionator Desert HTs front and rear. Now, I predominantly want to ride this in the dirt, so I haven't really gone with an adventure orientated tire yet, but I am pretty interested in the Midas, I think EO9s, as a bit of more of a compromise, because these are really just dirt focused tires. I've also got a CJ design. Now, I got this second hand off one of the 990 forums here in Australia. That relocates the side stand from the actual engine to the frame. Now, there's been a few cases again where while the bike's been on the side stand, the side stand's actually cracked and therefore ripped off a whole chunk out of the engine casing, and that's a pretty expensive fix. I also have a Alibaba copy of a camel toe sort of side stand pad widener, which is good for sand and also for mud, just to keep the bike up. Another issue with these bikes is that the actual master slave for the clutch sometimes goes, and this right here is an aftermarket version. This is the Oberon version, which is pretty cheap, and I think it's a standard change really if you have a 950 or 990 KTM. I also have some aftermarket pegs here. Now they came with the bike. They're obviously a lot larger and wider, a really nice amount of surface area here. Now the bash plate is a B&B bash plate, just like the rear rack, the same company, they still make it, and it's massive, covers a lot of the rear, a lot of the underside of the engine, and mounts onto the front oil tank, under the bottom, and here on the rear where the engine mount is. A lot of the other aftermarket bash plates for this bike, I think there's only 4 bolts, 4 mounting points, but this uses 6, which is quite a lot, I think, safer when you are hitting things, that you're not putting all that pressure onto just 4 points. This one rather, there's 6. Now I've got a triple clamp plastic cover here, and on the other side I actually have a billeted aluminium case. Now I originally ordered just 2 plastic covers, but they ran out of stock, so they offered me for the same price a billeted one on the right and this one here. So I jumped at that because I think the billeted one looks freaking awesome. Engine modification wise on this bike, I've added the triple clamp foam air filter on top, and I have rejetted the carburetors. So right now this bike is probably putting out over 110 horsepower, which is obviously more than enough stock, but now just a little bit sweeter, runs a little bit sweeter, and mashed with the acros, it's spot on. It's amazing. So another thing I've added to the bike is just a little rear master cylinder guard. Now I've seen a few reports of the sight glass on the master cylinder cracking and dumping all the fluid out. So I thought that was a really nice cheap way of just giving that a little bit more protection, a little more peace of mind that won't happen to me. And that's really it for the bottom, guys. I haven't done anything else. Now, like I said, this whole build, the whole idea of this build is to not put as much stuff as I can, only put the things I really need to keep that weight down and try to keep that fun factor up. That's it for the modifications I've done to this bike, and like I said to you, I've kept it to the minimum. I've bought cheap things where I can to afford extras that are a little bit more expensive. But the one modification that I love most and I have not done yet would be the suspension. My WR250R was completely transformed when I did the suspension on it, and that's something I'm going to take this bike in to get done. I've left that till last because, well, I wanted to see what the weight was going to be before I added my weight on it and had the suspension set up. But now that that's done, I'm going to take this down to Chad's off-road and get him to completely change the suspension. This is originally sprung for the previous owner that was 110 kilograms. So with weight on that, like his backpack and all those things, it's probably been sprung for about 120 kilograms. And I'm 90 kilograms. So I can feel it. It is super harsh. It's not dampening any of the bumps. So I'm looking really forward to having some properly set up suspension on this bike and letting it rip. Okay guys, look, thanks for watching this video, this I think 6th video in my modified series. I really appreciate it. If any of you are 950 owners out there taking a look at this, feel free to send me a message on Instagram or comment below and I'll get back to you. Like I said, it's not a very extensive build, but I think I've done enough to it to just make it that perfect weekender bike where I can take it camping and absolutely thrash it, keeping the weight down, keeping the power up, and keeping the fun up. It's a bloody awesome bike. I'm really chuffed with it, and I hope I'm going to have it for many years to come.